Welcome everyone to this week's episode. I am bringing you something this week that's really important. And I'm sure, as you can tell by the title, it's not a happy episode, but I think it is an important one. And so I would encourage any parent to really listen to my conversation with Mr. Greg Love, and anyone who is leading a church to listen to this as well. My guest today is a legal expert on the standards of care related to child sexual abuse. And I talked to him. He is absolutely wonderful. I know you will sense his heart as you listen to this episode. And at some point in our time together, I just became a mom and just asked him questions from a mother's perspective. So please do listen. He talks about how to spot grooming processes, things to be aware of, things to look out for. And he speaks against the traditional fear that there's a boogeyman in the ice cream truck, and actually really sheds a intellectual and statistical light on how our children can at times be groomed and abused. So I would say enjoy, but I would at this point just say please listen, and let's all do the best we can moving forward to protect our children and the people that God has entrusted to us in our churches. I'm happy and honored to bring you the co-founder of Ministry Safe, Greg Love. Okay, I'm back.
Nice.
Oh wow, yeah, you sound great. How do we survive without sound, guys? I don't know.
I know, and tell him that I usually sound like a gerbil on the playback, so do something about that. Give me that like Al Green type of,
He's saying he normally sounds like a gerbil on the playback, so give him an Al Green touch. He can do all the editing for us.
Okay. Beautiful.
That's how I actually normally start all of my podcast recordings is, first of all, you need to know everything can be edited.
Nice.
So you don't have to, I never want any guest to feel like you can't talk freely. Like, I will never put anything out there that, you would not want out there. But I want you to just feel the freedom and be like, if you go back, I had a guest a while ago that was talking about like her mom, and just some stuff. And she was like, I think I should like take out the stuff about my mom. And I was like, done.
Good. It's always good to know. See, as a lawyer, I assume no net. So
there's always a net with me. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and oh boy, we're already going to get into it. Yeah. I have so much to ask you. Thank you for doing this.
You're welcome.
Now, do you go by Gregory? Greg?
Only when I'm in trouble. Greg.
Okay, it's Greg. So thank you for doing this. I have Greg. Now you are is this correct? You're the co-founder of Ministry Safe.
That's correct.
Okay, wonderful. And I want to get into all that you do and all the work that you do. But first of all, where are you calling me from?
I'm in Fort Worth, Texas.
Oh, so we're so close.
Yeah, I was actually at your church 2 months ago with Donna Kent and Church Network.
That's amazing. Thank you for doing this. I want to get into all the work that you do. But can we backtrack to just how you grew up, where you're from, and how you were raised?
Sure.
I want to hear the whole story. If you don't know, this is like a long form podcast, so you don't have to have quick answers here. I want all the stories. I want to hear it. I want to get a very holistic view of who you are and then what led you into the work that you do.
Okay, because I really wish I had my wife's story as a family, because she grew up like the Waltons. We grew up like the Osborns.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Say no more. Say no more. Got it. Yep.
Anyway, long story short, I grew up in a single parent home. Where my mom had three. Yep. Mm-hmm. Single mom. Mm-hmm. And she had 3 boys, and she was single with 3 of us, all under 4.5. And it was just a little sporty. And so we grew up in Lubbock, Texas. Okay. And I was the middle of the 3, but we lived in a not a high-end apartment complex, in Lubbock, as she struggled as a dance professor at Texas Tech University.
Wow.
And so anyway, grew up in that world, and, she remarried to somebody that really, really loved her, but probably really wished she didn't have 3 boys.
Yeah.
And so just from a very early age, just trying to find ways to not be at home.
Yeah.
So my brothers were both making, poor decisions, and especially my older brother. And so early on, joining my mother to go and hire lawyers, especially for my older brother, and realizing, from a very small child, just trying to understand the world and realizing I could read the anxiety of my mother, though I didn't understand it. And it's like wondering, life feels scary. Life feels unsure. Life feels as if it's like one paycheck away from, going into some places that a very small child wouldn't understand, but it was just scary. And so the people that I encountered in that environment of hiring lawyers that just seemed to have, I wouldn't have articulated it this way at 8 years old, but that they had control. They looked like they knew the secret codes on how life worked to take away fear. And they clearly looked like they had money that we didn't have. And so as a small child trying to understand what gets me out of this place of fear, I figured, one day I want to grow up and be a lawyer.
Wow.
Because that's what I perceived as our family needing.
Yes, that's what you equated to help.
Safety. And security.
Safety.
And so, of course, I had no idea what lawyers did, but I probably was the only kid paying attention in junior high at the career fair. And I needed to know what's the fastest pathway to get to where I could, because that was the end game. And so that became my pursuit. So no, there was no lawyer I look back and go, I want to grow up and be just like you. I just... very imperfect conclusions drawn by a very small and scared child.
Yes. Yeah.
But that's where the pathway began. And, I'm pretty single-minded once that becomes what I decide is a pathway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. That's so wild. At 8 years old, you saw something that you held to for the rest of your life.
Right. I saw crisis, and I saw at least the resume, the profession that seemed to know how to handle crisis.
So going back to that 8-year-old child, what sort of things did you experience and I don't know anything about your life, obviously, so I'm not looking for you to bash your stepdad or anything. I'm just so curious as to, I would imagine each thing informed the next thing. And so what was the feeling of unsafety? What was the feeling? Was it a new man in the house? Was it no money?
Well, looking back as I do now, because another thing you don't know about me is I'm in my 27th year of student ministry, at Christ Chapel Bible Church, where I have a lot of people refer to me as their father. But back as that small child, I realized, looking back now, that normally when a man comes into the house, that can be a very, very positive experience. And for many young people, it is, to provide stability, to provide leadership, to provide a whole lot of things that are uniquely father in that home. But in my circumstance, that wasn't my experience. It was, I hate if my mother ever listened to this, but it was a really unhealthy experience. Yeah. And I hate to use the word abuse, because in my world, that's a very powerful word.
Abuse is, yes. Yeah. You deal with abuse every day now. And yes, the terms that.
But in terms of how I was treated and how my brothers were treated, it wasn't warm. It wasn't kind. It wasn't, it was not a healthy environment. And that's why at that young age, I would do everything I could. I'll join this athletic team. I'll spend the night with multiple nights with friends. I had to have a job. You had to have money. So I had a paper route at 13, just anything to create independence, and that's difficult for, a small child, no matter how resourceful.
But we all get these aspirations as children, but you got yours and you saw it through. Can you describe why? What kept you? As we all abandon most things we want as a children, what do you think kept you on the on the path of what you really knew you wanted to do and be?
I know exactly what the answer to that question is, even though
I love it. I can't wait.
I don't do what I do because I want a bigger boat than the guy next door, or I've got this certain dollar amount that gets it done for me, or how many houses, cars, whatever. I was driven by fear, plain and simple. Mm-hmm. And it is a hard driver. And so it's one of those things that the important benchmark in my life is I came to know the Lord at 17. And so I chased a really pretty girl into a Baptist church. And, she left me.
The tail is hold as time. And then God brought the right one eventually, I'm guessing.
He used one girl to bring me to him and another girl to bring me back to him.
Okay. Oh, wow.
But the first girl, that was just, I take all my fear and my brokenness and my Catholic upbringing, and just a hodgepodge of fear and confusion. And, I found Christ. Now, of course, I had my Savior, but I wasn't willing to let go of the wheel. So I had my Savior, but not my King. And because it taught me things about grace at a fundamental level, but it did not take away the fear. It did not take away the driver. And, Jesus was little bitty in my life then. And so the drive just kept moving forward. And so I had to have an undergraduate degree. And so I got an accounting degree. It's like, that's just like, what were you thinking? No, I'd rather be a YouTube gamer. But
that's great.
It was just, I heard from somebody, it was a great foundation, for a legal education. And once again, remember, fear, it wasn't just fear that now I'm a lawyer, I'm not afraid anymore. It was the lawyer was the pathway to finances and control, security.
Yeah.
And having the combination of accounting and law.
Which we all think will solve the fear.
Well, we all have different things we think take away fear, whether it's another person, whether it's a location, whether it's a whatever. But in mine, I couldn't have even articulated what it was. I was just driving after it.
Wow. So, so going back to when you're 17, you come to know the Lord. And so do you meet your wife in your teens?
No, I met a girl that I thought was going to be my wife, and we dated for, several years.
Yeah.
But it's like I look back now and again, I thought I'm an adult. I'm 17. Look at me.
I knew I knew everything at 17.
Right.
Everything.
And I'll share it with you if you need it. No?
Or if you don't ask, I'm happy to share. I know
I'm
it
a giver.
all.
I'm a giver. And so anyway, we grew up and, we grew apart. And so as soon as I had another crossroad in my life, I had the opportunity to go back into the community for which I was actually being fed and growing. And
that was a local church?
That was the church. But to me, that was primarily her church, not my church.
Yeah.
So right. Instead, I chose to spend the time with my, fraternity and which beautiful people making bad decisions. And so some of the dearest people in my life, like one of my fraternity brothers and roommate, after I got my world back in order, shared the gospel, prayed for him, came alongside him for 17 years until he came to know the Lord and asked me to baptize him.
Oh my goodness.
But even those people back then loved me and I loved them, but it started a 10-year period of time of not making decisions that would have honored the Lord.
Yeah.
And then I met the next woman God brought in my life, and that is now my wife.
And she's also
my law partner. Right. She is one of the co-founders of Ministry Set.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah.
I missed that somehow in my research. She's what?
In Miami right now. She's in Miami right now doing a training for the largest Hispanic church in the country.
Wow.
So
wow.
She's the A team. You just, unfortunately got me.
No. I believe in good partnerships. I have a dear counselor / therapist, that I talk to regularly, ministry and being,
Yep.
There, you need people to talk to. And he always reminds me that neither one of us is the full package.
Right.
And that we are both very much in need of the other one. So, but I love that you honor her like that. That's really wonderful.
Well, that is especially true with the two of us, that God has clearly knit us together, but he also knows that when she and I are moving the same direction in the same way, we're dangerous together. But when we are looking at each other with the finger pointing, we're dangerous to each other.
What would you say, because you're farther down the road than me, what would you say to anybody who is married to somebody who does the same thing as them? Whether it's a self-made business or ministry or, like what would you say to just encourage people?
Well, there's a lot of those cliches out there. It's like, don't marry somebody in the same profession. Certainly don't work with them. And I mean, we've decided, it's like, well, okay, let's figure out all the things people tell us don't do, and let's do that. And, but down the road, I mean, I'm married to a woman who's in the professional conflict business. Why would you want that as the person you're married to? But you see, at the end of the day, when I come home working I think every profession has its complexities. Especially ministry, especially the law. Yeah. And when I come home and I've had a difficult day and I really need someone to give me understanding, I'm married to someone who knows what the words I'm using mean. I'm talking to somebody that when I tell them about the experience that I had with this person that caused me disrespect, I had someone who doesn't need to smile and nod at me like a golden retriever and just know that I've had a bad day and just pet me. I have somebody that can get in that ditch with me, knows the language, knows the emotion, knows the disrespect, can offer me advice if I need it. But even beyond advice, just to hear me and for me to know she gets me. She knows.
She gets it. Yeah. That's powerful. Okay. Well, thanks for the therapy. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Moving on. Okay. So your journey took you to law school. You passed your pop quiz. That's what I'm going to call the bar from now on. Did you ever feel like a calling to what you do now? And I want you to go deep into what you do now soon. But was there ever a moment where you're like, I need to be an advocate. I need to do X, Y, and Z for abuse survivors. And how did that come?
That's not the way it happened. I know lots of people that it's like going, I suffered this trauma in my life and I'm going to dedicate my life to push against that trauma.
Yeah. That's kind of the standard. Yeah.
Not my story.
What was your story?
I just had a plan and God had a plan with a big P. Okay. And so he just let me through all my fears and chasing after what I thought would make me secure. I can only see the plan when I look backwards. So as I was charging forward, I was in a firm that we represented doctors in failed business deals. Okay, so there was plenty of work to do, wound up in multi-plaintiff litigation against an entity that was defrauding children into psychiatric hospitals and then kicking them out when their insurance runs out. I mean, just this racket.
Oh, man.
Started to become familiar with this. Now, Kimberly, who's my wife and law partner, worked in the same building. But because we were both young lawyers, and so you did whatever the partners at the firm didn't want to do. And so she was required to do the employment law thing, especially in churches and in ministries where someone is alleging like sexual harassment. You can't send the middle-aged, bald, white lawyer, male, to go quiz this woman about how she was mistreated. But they could send an attractive female lawyer to go ask the questions, and she's not afraid to say the words that
she could walk in rooms that you couldn't walk into,
and handle herself well. That it didn't look like an additional imbalance of power.
Yes,
and if somebody wanted to get horsey with Kim, it's like, I dare you, But
I feel like I am already in love with your wife. I'm going to have to get her when she gets back from Miami.
That'll be colorful. But she could push because my wife has a titanium spine. And so while I was working on this, mass litigation, and then I went out on my own, I opened my own practice because I was the hub of the wheel in terms of all of this work. And of course, sitting by the pool when my wife is saying, oh, you should do this for yourself. Yeah. So when the woman I love challenges me, like, yeah, I can do anything. Yeah, it's like, what was I thinking? But I wound up on my own, and all of my cases settled, and I was gainfully unemployed. I had money, but I had no work. It's like, okay, now what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Well, at the same time, Kimberly, after having done a lot of this work on employment law, got a case involving one of the pet entities here in Fort Worth for 100 years called the Masonic Home and School. Well, that entity changed a lot since those 12 mighty orphans. And it really slipped into a place where children were not well served.
Oh,
and so this young man who was, the guy named Brian, who was a seminary student at Southwestern, he wanted to be a youth minister or a music minister, couldn't decide, but he got a part-time job as a relief house parent at the Masonic Home School. And so when he got there, he's all about ministry. He cares. He wants to give his life away. And as a relief house parent, he's in all of the different group homes, and these kids just realize he's different, and they start to trust him, and they start to then entrust to him information about how they've been treated there and what they had been enduring, both physically and sexually. And he believed them. And this is like 92.
Okay.
And so he winds up going to his supervisors and saying, "Hey, these kids have been abused. We need to get them some care. We need to notify the authorities." Well, they resisted. No, we don't call the authorities.
Of course,
it's the law in Texas, and they told him to stand down. Well, he wouldn't stand down, and so ultimately they fired him and blamed him for being the abuser. Now, you can fire someone in the state of Texas for just about anything, but you can't fire someone for being good faith report of sexual abuse. And see, now they thought, but see, not only did they fire him, they blamed him for being the abuser. It's like, we'll teach you.
Oh my gosh.
But see, what you've done now is you've just forced him to sue you because now he's unemployable.
She took on that case.
Part of taking this case is to prove that someone was making a good faith report. You have to find, or it's helpful to find the people that were claiming to have been sexually and physically abused. Now, what I didn't know then, which is clear to me now, that if you want to go into a group of people that have been victimized and ask them questions about their experience with a body language and countenance of, I believe you and I want to know, it's amazing what you can learn. So we wound up talking to 49 victims of abuse, covering a 30-year period of time with multiple molesters. Yeah.
Oh,
it was just a petri dish of yuck. And so these people started asking Kimberly, will you be my voice too? Now, this is back when nobody was suing for child sexual abuse. This is while the Catholic Church was still undergoing their first litigation, which was in Dallas, Texas. And so our case grew to about 21 kids, and it resolved for a lot of money. It got a lot of attention. And so people from all over the country started contacting and say, hey, will you help us sue this entity? Hey, we've got this case. We didn't know it was worth money. Will you jump in on it with this? Now, most of those entities were suing churches or priests. Now, my wife is the daughter of a church planter. Okay, so together we're in ministry leadership. Now, sometimes lawsuits are the only way the church is going to learn, sadly.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to use my background education experience to do that. I'm going to use mine to play the long game and to equip, mentor, to educate the church. And which I'm here to tell you what, Jamie, that was in the late 90s.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, there have been some serious walls of frustration.
Yeah.
And I just remember the Lord when, looking back now, I realized that that's what you had prepared me for. That's what you wanted. It's like I had to be Joseph. I had to go to prison for a while. I mean, I had to go be a slave for a while. I got to go learn this skill for a while. And it's like, but to see him put all of those things together, only years later did it become clear, this is who I want you to be. And so, and same thing with Kimberly. And he put us both together. And it's like, I remember crying out to the Lord once that I'm frustrated. This is hard. Why won't my people listen to me? I'm smart. I know how the train wrecks. I want to save you that pain and your children from that human carnage. And you look at me and pat me on the head. And I remember the Lord just telling me, Greg, if this were going to be easy, I'd have raised up a social worker. Okay?
Yeah.
I raised up 2 people that are razor sharp in the conflict business because that's what my body needs.
Yeah.
And it's like, Roger that, Lord. So that's kind of when I finally took inventory of the fact, probably in about 2005, that this is the work that I've been doing. And it's almost like I need you to not just do this work, but I need you to take your background in accounting and business and law and chems and employment law and put all of this together and create a sustainable, organized way to communicate to my body. Now, is the secular world going to benefit from that? Absolutely. And they do. So I can tell you about our secular resume. We wrote the Safe Sport program for the United States Olympic Committee.
Wow.
And so that was in 2011 when USA Swimming was struggling, not gymnastics. So we've been at this a long time with a broad bank of experience. And so that's what we do, why we do it, and how I would finally accept this is what God's plan is for me. And now actually our daughter's in her 2nd year at Duke Law. She's going to come to work for us, I think.
That's awesome. I bet you never dreamed you'd start the family business from day one of all this.
There was no family business at day one.
Of course.
But along the way, just starting to see her giftedness and how the Lord has wired her for the advocacy of those that are vulnerable, it's not much of a surprise to me.
I would really love your thought for moms like me who are desperate to protect their children from any sort of possible wrong scenarios or devastating scenarios, and how to kind of like gauge and spot them. Does that make sense?
Let's break that down.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Because a lot of folks, they'll have that stir in their belly that this scares me. It's I'm afraid the stakes are so high that if I make this mistake once and I've potentially created a lifetime of challenge for my child and my family.
You're reading my mind. You're reading my mind.
And so it's I appreciate, I don't know of many parents that's like, I don't care. Good luck, kid. I mean, that's just not parenting. That's just not, the instinct God gives us to care for that which he's entrusted to us. So I've got that urge, but unfortunately it's not necessarily married with good information.
Okay.
And so I'm afraid. And so out of my fear, I'm going to keep my child close.
Yes.
And I'm going to overreact out of ignorance because I don't understand. But see, even if you got right down into it, and this is where I've met so many families in the ditch, to start doing the postmortem, to start doing the, let's walk through your experience. So my goal is to take the experience of so many people that have been in places they don't want to be to equip parents that are not there yet. So they know how to navigate and learn from other people's mistakes. So the starting place in all of that, Jamie, is we have to understand what is the risk. It's not just the boogeyman. It's not just the dude in the ice cream truck. It's like on Halloween night. Okay, I'll spot you that. Everybody's a perp on Halloween. Okay, I'm going to have my kid with me, and I've got a taser in my back pocket. I mean, it's like that's just one night of the year, but the rest, I want to set it down, and I want to rest.
You're describing everything I'm thinking right now. Yes, how do we do it? Like, how do we spot it? How do we be careful without overcompensating and doing the cliches of the Halloween night, like the razor blades and the candy? Nobody is putting razor blades and candy.
So it's in that sense, I'll just skip to the answer. And then you can tell me how deep you want to go.
Okay.
Most people want to protect their children, but they don't know what they're protecting their child from. They have these caricatures that are reinforced by the media. They're reinforced by the news because there's almost like this all the way across the bar misunderstanding of what is placing our children at risk. So once I presume that my child is at risk from that, then I'm gonna protect my child from that. And unfortunately, that is the stranger in the white van.
Oh, it's the person which that's is going so to rare.
Right, snatch my kid off the street while walking home from the sleepover, or that's the abduction offender. Okay, 4% of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, do I want to protect my child from the abduction offender? Absolutely.
Yes. Absolutely.
But you see, if I've protected my child from the abduction offender, most of the parents I know who love the Lord and love their children think they've done enough, and they close their eyes and they rest. Or they'll move into a cul-de-sac in a nice neighborhood and look around them, and there's nobody on the online sex offender registry that lives in my neighborhood. And as long as nobody comes in on this corner of the neighborhood, my child can ride her or his bike all over the neighborhood. And I know that there is a boundary of safety around. I think that's just wrong. So what is right?
I'm so tracking. Yes.
It's trying to help people understand. I want to protect my child from that number one abduction offender, but also
absolutely
that number two, which is the preferential offender.
Okay, and can you unpack that?
Yes, but see,
the
abduction offender is going to usually gain access by force and violence.
Yep.
Okay, it's the grab the child in the car, go. The preferential offender is not. The preferential offender is going to use manipulation and deception. Okay, it's like, stop, now let's back up. Because the preferential offender is not going to parachute into your life and my life, Jamie, throwing around elbows and attitude to try to gain access to my child.
Right.
What does the preferential offender do? Manipulation and deception. Greg, that's not enough of an answer. What do you mean by that? Okay, well, Jamie, we need to take inventory of some of the ways in our culture we just naturally do life.
Yes.
There are some ways we naturally do life that the preferential offender sees as a seam in the garment. And we just need to open our eyes and understand, whoa, that's exactly what I do. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Okay, there's about 6 of these that if I had the time with you, I would unpack.
You have the time. You have the time.
Okay, so the first one is we need to understand that in our culture, let me put it to you this way, Jamie.
Yeah.
Even though I'm a sexual abuse expert and I'm married to a sexual abuse expert, I don't live in a bunker. Okay, I live in community. And God has called me to live in community. That's the way I'm wired. That's what I do. All right. But you see, I do life as if I'm standing on this wall. And here's my wife. She stands on my right hand. My wife is helpful, trustworthy, and kind, and we do life together. Okay. Then she has her girls at her Bible study ladies that are called her 5 sisters. And then here's my Thursday morning guys that I've been meeting with for 19 or 20 years. And those families, in our family, we do life together. We stand on a wall. And together, we protect that which is important to us from that out there, which is dark and getting darker. Okay. Yes. Now, if a complete stranger came to my house and knocked on the door, and when I opened the door, that complete stranger said to me, "Excuse me, sir, I know you don't know me, but you have a nice car. Can I borrow your car?" Okay, I love Jesus, but it's probably a colorful variation of no, right? But
yes,
if my best,
absolutely.
If my best friend Hal came to me and said, "Hey, Greg, I know you're going to be out of town next week. If I drive to the airport, can I borrow your car? Mine's in the shop." What am I going to tell my best friend Hal? Like, absolutely. Didn't see my house keys on there. Will you feed my wife's cat? That makes my marriage work. Okay, see, I've just given Hal, my car, access to everything I own while he knows I'm away. Make it go epically bad for me. But the reason why Hal gets the keys is because he's on the wall of my life.
Okay.
When someone's on the wall of my life, the barriers of protection to my car go down. The barriers of protection to my stuff go down.
Goes down.
And the barriers of protection to our children go down. The preferential offender knows that if you come to my door and you knock on my door and you say, "Excuse me, sir, is that your little girl out there swinging? She is lovely. Can I take her to my house just for an hour?"
No.
That goes epically bad in Fort Worth.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
But see, the stranger knows that. The stranger knows the way you get access to my child is you first have to get on the wall. The stranger knows the first step to gaining access to my child is getting on the wall.
Okay.
So the abuser is going to try to get on the wall. How do you get on the wall of my life? You come to me and say, hey, I'm a felon and a dirtbag. Can you want to do life together, Greg? It's like, let me think about it. No.
Gotcha. Okay. Yep.
The abuser wants to convince me that he or she is helpful, trustworthy, and kind.
Okay.
That's what gives you on the wall. Now, how
this is making sense. Yeah.
Is helpful, trustworthy, and kind. Jim is helpful, trustworthy, and kind. But see, now let's go back up to my wall before the stranger knocked on my door. It's the way you protect your child is you have to know how the child's coming under attack. Yeah. Okay, another way to say that,
so
Jamie,
good.
is
that's so good.
The type of fence you build is driven by what you want to keep out. And so if you have a beautiful garden and you want to keep livestock out of your garden, what type of fence do you build? Okay, metal stakes and barbed wire. Okay?
Yeah.
But see, if you build a beautiful barbed wire fence, it's effective at keeping livestock out, but it's absolutely worthless at keeping the bunnies out.
Totally.
And that's the problem is we build beautiful barbed wire fences and the bunnies are ripping our homes. Okay. So what do I mean by the barbed wire fence? Because we perceive the problem to be an abduction offender, all of our efforts are barbed wire aimed at 4% of the risk. So it's you need that fence, but you see, we need to focus on the fact that the preferential offender represents 94% of the problem. Okay, so now, what type of fence do I build? Here's a piece of information. Preferential offenders had no visual profile. Okay. Stranger danger, it disserves you. It doesn't help you. Stranger danger can help you on the abduction offender. Stranger danger actually disserves you on the preferential offender. Okay. So put away and see, that's Jamie, the natural way we're wired to do child protection.
It is. Fear. It's fear.
It's stranger danger.
Yep.
Right. It's
fear.
No, it's recognizing it's the dirt bag with the white van.
Oh, okay. Yep. It's just, there's a bad guy. There's a quote unquote bad guy.
Even the neighborhood watch signs have the creepy dude with the eyes. And okay, so as long as that's my barbed wire fence. Do I have to protect children from that? Yes. Now,
absolutely.
The preferential offender has no visual profile. They look like you and me. Yeah. Okay, so I can't spot the preferential offender visually. I must recognize the preferential offender behaviorally.
Okay.
And that begs the next question.
Yes.
What are the behaviors? Remember, the type of fence you build is driven by what you want to keep out. The what you want to keep out doesn't come with a visual profile. You've got to recognize behaviors, and that's called the grooming process.
Okay.
So my moms need to, A, recognize that there are two types of abusers. Actually, there's four. But really the ones that are coming, it's the two types. It's the abduction. Great. Lock your door. Get your Ring bell, your cameras. Roger that. You know, what do you do about the preferential offender? Well, the first thing you need to know is grooming process. No visual profile. Well, what am I fighting against there, Jamie?
Right. Oh, man.
Well, I'm fighting against the fact that I naturally want to live in community.
Yes.
And I'm going to lower my guard when someone convinces me they're helpful, trustworthy, and kind.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to contrast that behavior with the way that we do it in my home. When Georgia, and that's our daughter, when she was little, say a toddler, I want to protect my child from sexual abuse just like you want to protect your toddler.
Absolutely.
Okay? But see, I know more than you do, and here's how that works. I know what barriers of protection to put around my toddler because I know how somebody wants to give it a go. Because I know how someone would give it a go.
You have the information.
That's now right.
That's
because I know how a perp will give it a go with a toddler. I know what barriers to put in place. But see, that's not enough. Because I live in community.
Okay.
Because I go to house and look, I know you love Colt and Sarah. Here's the information about the preferential offender's behavior you need to know. And here are the barriers that need to go up around your children, given their ages and the programs are involved in. Jim, I know you love Cassidy and Carson. Here's the information about the preferential offenders grooming process. Here's the barriers. Everybody on my wall is sharing the same information about the preferential offender and the necessary barriers that go up because we live in community. Now let's go back to your question about how. Yes. Let's don't make it how. Let's make it the stranger.
We all love how. I'm sure Hal's tried and tested for decades by now. Yes, but yes.
Let's say that the stranger comes to me and convinces me they're helpful, trustworthy, and kind. I want to do life with you, Greg. I look at you, you're helpful, trustworthy, and kind. Normally, there goes my barriers go down. But I'm here to tell you, moms, dads.
Yes.
The barriers stay up.
Okay.
And they never come down. My eyes are open. My eyes never close.
Okay.
And what are my eyes open for? Not a visual profile, for the grooming process.
Okay.
Even if the grooming process is exhibited by somebody who looks like me.
Okay.
Most of the time, the risk comes from a family member or a close proximity person. So here's that person's now on the wall of my life. Okay. Now, what is the effect? What's the impact of that? The barriers to my car, they go down. The barriers to my stuff, they go down. But the barriers to my child are non-negotiable.
Yes.
And everybody on the wall of my life, Jamie, knows that.
Yep.
They all have eyes to see and ears to hear, so that when we're in community, everybody knows where the barriers are. Hal knows I will never drive up into his driveway with his daughter in my car alone after soccer practice. He knows that. She knows that. I know that.
Good.
And everybody else, when they see a ping on that radar, I want you to see the problems before someone's nude with a child.
Yes. Yes.
This person's in the closet with this child. This person's always doing private lessons with this child. This person's always wanting this child for sleepover. It's like when I want you to see behaviors, even if the behaviors come from someone educated, attractive, articulate, and female, and related.
Okay.
So we have to first resist that urge that when someone convinces us they're helpful, trustworthy, and kind, or they're educated, attractive, and articulate, the barrier doesn't come down. The barrier stays up. Not in that kind of, oh my gosh, everybody's a perp.
And I think that's kind of where I'm finding myself at these days is like, I don't want to accuse everyone in my brain, but I also trust no one,
Let me describe a situation for you in student ministry, a lot of people think, oh my gosh, Greg, you know all this, doesn't that terrify you to work in a student ministry? No, it empowers me. Because you see, it's team ball. If everybody has been trained. I remember once I had a young man in one of my small groups, and we were in all these small rooms at night on Sunday evenings for small group, and his dad had left his mom for another guy. And it was really upsetting to him, and he was really trying to create categories for this. He's very upset. He didn't want to talk about it in front of the group, so he and I were talking about it after all the guys left. And we have a rule. You don't have unobserved one-on-one interaction with young people. And so we were in the corner and he was crying. I was all into him. And next thing you know, one of the guys from the next group, when a dear friend of mine named David stopped me, he goes, yo, Greg. And I looked up and he just kind of made that kind of circle your fingers like, we got to move out. And I looked around like, hey, I didn't intend to be in an unobserved one-on-one situation, but I found myself there. And my friend David playing team ball said, no, we got to get down to the children's desk. And so we went down, and now my radar's up. We're having the conversation, and then we moved out to the parking lot, and then we just had to pick it up somewhere that was more public. But see, in that situation, I have people around me that are in a ministry and also in my community that we're all seeing this, and we want to redirect those things that we see that might be problematic. But if I start to see those over and over, or at least something that's one of those significant departures, you got my attention. I'm not going to be one of those people that, well, you know what, now that you mention it, that guy always was in the closet with my daughter. I'm just not going to be that guy. So my calling in life, if you will, is I want everyone to understand here are the ways that we naturally live life that disserve us. Here's the seam that the preferential offender sees and moves through. Background checks, that is not the answer. Okay?
Yes.
I want you to understand.
No.
Jerry Sandusky. hundreds of victims. And if you'd relied on a visual profile, you would have failed just like all those very smart people did. But if you'd have understood the behaviors of the preferential offender, you would have seen that clearly 45 years ago. Okay? It's just understanding the ways in which our natural way of doing things disserves us. Put good information to understand that's the risk. This is what I need to see, and get everybody's eyes open. Give them eyes to see, ears to hear, a mouth that speaks. That's how we solve the problem. So parents, I don't want you to be paranoid. I don't want you to work in fear. I want you to be equipped with knowledge and also to understand, hey, how somebody grooms a teenage girl looks different than a 5-year-old boy. If you've got a 5-year-old boy, I need you to be a student of how a preferential offender gives it a go with a 5-year-old. Okay, playful touch unto isolation. Okay, that simple phrase. Now look for it. The world will start to look different, and I want it to. So that's a long answer to your short question, but it wasn't really a short question.
It wasn't a short question at all. I genuinely I'm not just asking these questions as like a podcast host. I'm asking as a mom. And so it means a lot to me that you would take this time because
lots of moms need to know. In fact, Jamie, my wife does a training called a parent training. And it is all about parents. And like when she does these live, it's heavily attended. Sadly, it's mostly women. And disappoints me, dads. But
say that again.
You get it from Kim, and you get it in a way that's it's a logical flow of it from the beginning as Kim would unpack it. And I think that's really a good resource for folks. Anyway, that's one thing I think would be valuable, so we don't have to do all of that here and can move on to maybe question number 2.
Question number 2 for ministry. What was question number 2? I'm such a mom right now in my brain. I'm like, okay, yes, we care about like ministry and practices as well. And your actual ministry, Safe. How was it started? What's the goal? I heard about you from one of my sweet friends, Caroline, who is a camp counselor at, I don't remember where right now, but she texted me and said, I really feel like y'all would benefit from this. And so I know our church is enrolled and everything, but please just, let me know from the broad aspect for pastors, for teachers, we have so many preschool employees. And we have an academy. We have an academy. So we have teachers. We have, so many volunteers. How can we do a good job within a church setting? And then anything you want to say around that, I'm here for. I'm so here for it.
Well, let me try to tell you what gave rise to Ministry Safe, because Kim and I have been partners in the firm Love and Norris. I'm the Love, she's the Norris. And doing this work, but the work is complicated, and it's oftentimes further complicated by the fact that some of the conversations that I need to have with organizations that are just in the ditch and don't know where to go or how to move forward, they need good legal advice and an attorney-client privilege to safely, just like with your doctor, you're not going to share things with people if you felt like I was going to put it on Facebook.
Absolutely.
It's like these churches, like we're in the ditch and we don't know what to do. The media is camped out front. Law enforcement wants our employees' file, and we have no clue. And I wish you'd have had a clue, but that doesn't change the fact that you're in great need. And so, but there's other organizations that's like, well, look, we want the world to know that we're talking to you guys. We want our parents to know that. And so we created Ministry Safe so that you could understand kind of the different ways they work. 9/11 is kind of a helpful, framework for that. After the terrorist attacks, we got 2 new organizations that we didn't have before. One was the 9/11 Commission, and one was Homeland Security. Okay? The 9/11 Commission, for all intents and purposes, stands in the crater and looks backward and tries to understand how things went wrong. Okay? That is That's akin to the lawyer doing litigation work. There's been a crisis, and I'm going to stand in your crater, and I'm going to help you understand what went wrong. I won't be the lawyer that defends you in court if there is court, but I'm going to help you understand this is how the train left the tracks. Okay? Homeland Security are the people that stand in the crater and look forward and try to put the systems in place to make sure that something like this never happens again. And so Ministry Safe is akin to Homeland Security in the sense that I'm going to help you design, implement, and deploy safety system resources to try to keep from ever having this again. So as a civil trial lawyer, and Kimberly as well, we've stood over 28 years of train wrecks, and I'm here to tell you, Jamie, I know how the train gets off the track. And the good news from what we do is we've done this long enough that I get to see the patterns that the church never gets to see because they're only evaluating their one set of facts to see if something has a pattern. The good news in that, Jamie, is that it's predictable. And if something is predictable, it's preventable. And so what we've done is taken the 30 years of experience that we've had individually and created resources understanding exactly how this risk works. Wow. And so this is then what you need to do that's directly connected to this is how you come under attack. And it's also recognizing because in our experience, I mean, I spent time on a Christian school board. You know, Kim is the backbone for the Christian Camp and Conference Association's Camper Protect program. You know, we're the architects of Safe Sport. I mean, we have a broad enough experience in child-serving organizations to where we're working with daycares, camps, schools, nurseries, special needs organizations. And so each one of those, as a program offering, has a different way in which the children of that particular age are served. And so the grooming process unfolds differently in a daycare than it does in a youth soccer program. And so we're helping these crafts.
This makes
we call
sense.
it a five-part safety system, but it modifies depending on who you are. So a daycare center, the policies and procedures will not deal with Facebook, social media, and weed. Because people aren't using alcohol, tobacco, weed, and Snapchat to victimize a 5-year-old. It's playful touch unto isolation. Now, even between teenage girls and teenage boys, with the boys, it's the alcohol, tobacco, porn, weed. With the girl, it's the social media and communication into a relationship.
Oh, I can't imagine what statistics you have even just on social media alone.
Right. So understanding all of the ways in which this unfolds, when I get contacted by Trail Life USA, like, let me help you craft your system.
Yes.
Which is going to look different from Bright Horizons or Goddard Schools.
Yes.
Or, Think Schools or...
This is not a one thing fits all. You tailor it.
It's tailored, but it all has as its root
wonderful.
The grooming process.
Yes. Okay.
And so Ministry Safe, seeing as how that's what we do. I'm not going to help you drive your 15-seater van, and I'm not going to help you get your fire extinguishers in the right room. We're a one-trick pony as it relates to child safety from sexual abuse. And we have done nothing but pour resources into making sure that that is as efficient and slick as it can be. So we just spent probably $250,000 reshooting our base awareness training in Atlanta, to make sure it's always the best it can possibly be. Because I hate the fact that oftentimes for the church, we're always 10 years behind using media to be able to communicate. And we just decided we are not going to be that organization. So we've got a secular side to what we do called abuse prevention systems.
Great.
And so between Ministry Safe and abuse prevention systems, we're probably serving 30,000 entities across North America.
It's so wonderful. I can't thank you enough for what you're doing. And I'm sure I would imagine you could be making a whole lot more money doing a whole lot of other things. And so I just want you to know I honor you and the work that you're doing. And I am believing that our church, as well as many others, are going to become truly like well-established, preventative, knowing the signs, everything. I mean, and it's your ministry that's equipping us with that. And so I thank you. I honor you and your wife. Please tell her thank you. I will put all the links on the Instagram and on the website after we finish. And I'm just very, very grateful.
So I will take that encouragement, and I will thank you, my sister in Christ. And
yes, I mean it. Like, we're a church that started 20 years ago by our founding pastor. My husband and I took it over 7 years ago. We're young. By young, I say 41, but I feel like I'm 20 still, emotionally. And we're learning, and we are trying to really implement all of these things, because more than anything, we want our children protected. So I just cannot thank you enough for the work that you're doing. And I'll reach out to you. I'm sending you a gift, and give your wife and your family all of my love, and congratulations to your daughter on her graduation. And I'm excited to see what she's going to do with y'all.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.